Hey guys, tonight we dive into the clouds, literally. You're floating high above a shimmering swirl of silver mist, somewhere between nothingness and the first whisper of creation. Beneath you, time hasn't quite learned how to tick yet. Shapes wobble like soft jelly. Darkness stretches, light flutters, and you, of course, are somehow both there and not there. Welcome to the beginning, where chaos isn't an insult, but an entire lifestyle. You probably won't survive this, by the way. But don't worry, nobody really does. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing how far this sleepy little community stretches across the globe. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The air thickens around you, dense as soup, humming with potential. Out of this cosmic fog rises Gaia, the Earth, broad, steady, and endlessly patient. Then comes Uranus, the sky, sweeping across her with a stormy embrace that's equal parts romantic and suffocating. Together, they bring forth the first generation of beings, titans, cyclopes, and all manner of cosmic teenagers with far too much power and no bedtime. You drift closer, watching one particular titan, Cronus. He's not the worst of the bunch, but he's got trust issues the size of Mount Olympus. A prophecy tells him that one of his children will overthrow him, which is, of course, the ancient Greek version of, "Your kid's going to take your job." Cronus decides to get ahead of things in the least creative way possible by swallowing each baby whole. No chewing, no seasoning, just gulp. Historians still argue whether this myth reflects real ancient anxieties about power and succession, or if it was just a colorful bedtime story meant to explain why the sky sometimes seems to devour the sun. Either way, it's a deeply unsettling parenting method. You hover beside Rhea, Cronus's wife, as she watches yet another newborn disappear down her husband's throat. She's exhausted, heartbroken, and, let's be honest, probably regretting some life choices. When her sixth child, Zeus, is born, she decides enough is enough. Rhea flees to the island of Crete, where the air tastes of salt and wild thyme. The waves hush against the cliffs like they're in on the secret. Here, she hides the infant god in a cave, wrapped in swaddling cloth and hope. Instead of a baby, she hands Cronus a rock swaddled in a blanket. He doesn't notice the difference, which says a lot about both his parenting and his palate. The cave is alive with echoes. Bees hum lazily in the corners, and the scent of fresh honey mingles with damp stone. Zeus is nursed by the divine goat Amalthea. Yes, a goat. You can hear her soft bleats as she nudges the infant god. Her fur warm, her eyes calm. Rhea leaves her son in the care of the Curetes, armored dancers who clang their shields and stomp their feet whenever the baby cries. The noise drowns out his wails, hiding the sound from Cronus's all-hearing paranoia. It's an ancient form of noise canceling, really primitive but effective. Some historians say the story of baby Zeus being raised in a cave mirrors older Minoan myths of sacred births, where divine rulers were born in secret before returning to claim the world. Others think it's just symbolic, chaos giving birth to order, hidden in the shadows before emerging to rule the skies. Either way, the air in that cave feels electric with destiny. As Zeus grows, you can sense something wild in him. Curiosity like lightning before a storm. He plays with the bees, tugs Amalthea's beard, and occasionally manages to send tiny sparks flickering from his fingertips. The Curetes watch in awe, unsure whether to bow or bring more milk. There's a fringe theory, probably made up by an ancient poet who'd had too much wine, that Zeus's first thunderbolt was actually an accident, a sort of divine burp that startled everyone within 100 miles. And honestly, imagining baby Zeus hiccuping lightning makes the king of gods feel just a little more relatable. Years pass in the blink of an immortal eye. The cave that once echoed with infant cries now hums with a deeper resonance, a promise that this hidden child will one day shake the heavens. Outside, the world changes slowly. Titans rule from their mountain thrones, unmoved by mortal prayers. The seas churn, the skies blaze, and no one yet knows that a storm is quietly forming beneath their feet. You follow Rhea as she visits in secret, her hands trembling when she touches her son's cheek. She tells him stories of his brothers and sisters, Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, Poseidon, all swallowed alive, waiting in darkness. Zeus listens, wide-eyed, as if storing every detail for the day he'll make things right. Sometimes, when the moonlight spills into the cave, he sneaks to the entrance and stares at the horizon. You can almost feel his yearning to burst out, to roar back at the father who devoured his family. The Curetes whisper among themselves, wondering when this quiet boy will turn into the storm he's destined to be. One night, a thunderhead blooms above Crete even though the sky is perfectly clear. It's as if the world senses what's about to happen, the calm before every mythic storm. Rhea kneels beside her son and tells him the truth, who his father is, what he has done, and why he must someday confront him. Zeus listens in silence. Then, in a voice still soft but edged with lightning, he promises her he will set things right. The cave trembles faintly, pebbles dancing on the floor. Amalthea bleats nervously, and Rhea feels both fear and pride coil together in her chest. The first flash of lightning cuts through the cave, brief but brilliant. It leaves a faint smell of ozone and milk. Zeus laughs softly, as if even the thunder is his plaything. You realize then that the universe has begun to shift. The days of the Titans are numbered, and somewhere, Cronus stirs uneasily in his sleep, not knowing that his reckoning has already been born. The cave smells faintly of honey and ozone now, as if the air itself remembers that first spark from the boy who will one day hurl thunder like javelins. You watch young Zeus stretch, taller each season, his skin bronzed by firelight and goat milk, his eyes flickering with something ancient. The nymphs murmur that he's becoming restless, too big for the cave, too curious for safety. Outside, Crete hums with life. Olive trees shimmer in the sun, and cicadas buzz like tiny prophets predicting storms. You follow Zeus as he edges toward the cave mouth barefoot, blinking at a sky so wide it almost frightens him. For the first time, he sees the sea, endless, dazzling, breathing against the cliffs. It's a moment both small and cosmic, a god realizing there's a world waiting for him. He climbs a ridge, laughing at the wind, and for a heartbeat you can imagine him as any mortal boy testing the limits of his world. But when he shouts, the echo comes back as thunder. That's when Amalthea, his goat mother, nudges him back down toward safety, bleating anxiously. You can't blame her. Raising a lightning-throwing child must be exhausting. Historians still argue whether Zeus's upbringing on Crete symbolizes a secret initiation, an early echo of Minoan rites for young kings, hidden before their coronation. Maybe that's why his cave, the Idaean Cave, became a sacred site for centuries, dotted with offerings of bronze and honey. Maybe ancient worshippers hoped a spark of his luck would rub off on their own sons. One afternoon, Rhea returns in disguise. She brings with her a woman cloaked in starlight and silence, Métis, a Titaness known for wisdom sharper than any blade. You hover close as they whisper in the shadows, their voices trembling with conspiracy. Métis studies the boy, her eyes softening. He must learn cunning, she says. Strength alone can't defeat Cronus. So begins Zeus's secret education. You watch as Métis teaches him to listen, to the hum of insects, the sigh of wind through trees, the heartbeat of the earth itself. Power without patience, she tells him, is just thunder that burns its own sky. It's a lesson he'll almost forget later, but for now, he listens well. There's a quirky little detail in some versions of the myth, one of those footnotes that scholars love to argue about. Supposedly, Amalthea's broken horn became the first cornucopia, the horn of plenty. Picture it, a divine goat accidentally inventing abundance because a baby god tugged too hard during snack time. That's Greek mythology for you. Sacred chaos, with snacks. Years pass. Zeus grows lean and strong, the curls of his hair dark as storm clouds, his laughter booming through the hills. The Curetes, once his guardians, now follow his commands like soldiers. But he's not reckless, at least, not yet. When storms gather, he stands at the cave mouth, feeling the tremor in the sky, as though the heavens themselves are calling him home. One night, lightning flashes across the horizon, not his, but something older and angrier. Cronus is restless. From the shadows of Tartarus, Whispers reach Crete. The old Titan feels something stirring in the weave of fate. His dreams are full of storms and betrayal. You hover beside Rhea as she paces. "It's time," she murmurs. "If he stays hidden, the world will never change." She turns to Métis. "Help him. Make him clever enough to do what I could not." Métis nods, her smile thin as moonlight. She leads Zeus to a spring whose water gleams like liquid silver. "To free your siblings," she says, "you must face your father not with fire, but with wit." She dips a cup into the spring and stirs a few herbs, mountain mint, crushed laurel, something secret. The mixture shimmers like captured lightning. "Give him this," she tells Zeus. "He'll drink it thinking it a toast to his power, but it will loosen what he swallowed long ago." Zeus takes the cup with both hands, feeling its cool weight. "And if he refuses," he asks, "then make him trust you." Métis replies, "Even titans can be fooled by kindness." Historians still debate whether this story represents the dawn of Greek values, shifting from brute force to cunning intelligence. Some call it the mythic birth of diplomacy, others just call it trickery. Either way, it works. You follow Zeus as he descends from Crete for the first time, disguised as a humble cupbearer. The world feels enormous, pulsing with mortal life, farmers calling to their oxen, waves slapping the rocks, smoke curling from clay ovens. He moves among them quietly, tasting humanity for the first time. He even helps a fisherman untangle his net, smiling when the man offers him a fig in thanks. It's strange, isn't it? The future king of gods pausing to eat fruit with mortals who will one day pray to him. There's something charmingly humble about it, like Superman doing your grocery run. Eventually, Zeus reaches the dark palace of Cronus, carved from obsidian and shadow. Titans move through its halls like mountains, pretending to be men. Cronus himself sits upon a throne of black stone, his beard streaked with frost, his eyes glittering with paranoia. The air smells faintly of iron and old fear. Zeus bows low. "Mighty Cronus," he says, voice steady, "I bring you a drink to strengthen your rule, offered from the springs of Crete." Cronus eyes the cup suspiciously, then grins, a grin too sharp for comfort. "A toast," he growls, "to my eternal reign." He drinks deeply. The silence that follows is thick as syrup. Then, slowly, Cronus's expression changes. His chest tightens. He groans, a sound like stone cracking under pressure. And from deep within him comes a retch so violent it rattles the hall. You might want to look away at this point. It's not pretty. Out of his mouth tumble gods, full-grown and blinking. Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, Poseidon. Each one gasps as if reborn. The floor shivers under their feet. Cronus stares, horrified, as his children stand before him once again, free and furious. Historians still argue whether the image of Cronus vomiting his offspring reflects a symbolic rebirth of cosmic order. Others think it's just proof that ancient poets had no sense of subtlety. Either way, Zeus wipes his mouth and smiles faintly. "Father," he says, lightning flickering in his eyes, "your reign is over." The world pauses, holding its breath. Somewhere far above, the wind begins to gather, rolling like distant drums. You can feel the first tremor of the storm to come, the war of gods against titans. And through it all, baby Zeus of the cave stands calm, ready to grow into his thunder. The silence that follows Cronus's convulsions feels impossibly heavy, like the pause between lightning and thunder. Around you, the free gods stand blinking, slick with the taste of darkness and freedom. Hestia steadies herself first, brushing dust from her robes. Poseidon rolls his shoulders, muscles gleaming like the sea he'll one day command. Hades stares at his hands, as though remembering what light looks like. Hera looks at Zeus with a mix of awe and something sharper, respect laced with suspicion. Families are complicated, even when immortal. Cronus slumps back, wheezing, clutching his gut as if the universe itself just betrayed him. Zeus steps closer, calm and dangerous. "You devoured your children," he says softly, "and still expected loyalty." Cronus tries to rise, but the weight of his age drags him down. "I did what I must," he croaks. "The prophecy still came true." Zeus interrupts, his voice the rumble of far-off thunder. Historians still argue whether the Titanomachy, the war between Titans and Olympians, was born from literal rebellion or just an allegory of new gods replacing old beliefs. Some think it mirrors real shifts in Bronze Age religion, sky gods overtaking earth deities. Others think it's just the ultimate family feud, scaled up to cosmic proportions. Either way, you can feel it beginning. Zeus helps his siblings to their feet. "We're leaving," he says. "The world's big enough for something better." They glance toward the palace gates, wide enough to swallow armies. For a moment, no one moves. Then Poseidon laughs, low and dangerous. "After you, little brother." You follow them out into the vast night. Stars shimmer like eyes watching from a distance. The air tastes of ash and electricity. Each step feels like the first heartbeat of a new era. But Cronus's roar follows them, an ancient, cracking sound that shakes the hills. "Ungrateful whelps," he bellows. "You think you can defy the Titans?" Zeus doesn't answer. He raises his hand instead, and a flicker of light dances across his palm. Small but pure. Lightning, still a whisper of what it will become. The others gather close, their faces lit by that tiny spark. Some say the Cyclopes, the one-eyed smiths imprisoned in Tartarus, hear that spark and begin to stir. You drift downward, past the crust of the world, into a realm of molten stone and shadows. The Cyclopes toil there, chained by Cronus long ago for being too clever. Brontes, Steripes, Argesh, thunder, lightning, and bright. They hammer sparks from anvils the size of mountains. A faint vibration travels through the rock. Brontes lifts his head, his single eye narrowing. You feel that. "It's him." Argesh grins. The sky's new voice. They begin to work, striking faster, sending tremors up through the earth. What they're making, no one can yet say. But you can smell metal and destiny in the air. Back on the surface, Zeus and his siblings hide among cliffs and caverns, gathering allies. From the deep earth, the 100-handed Cenomanes emerge, each a walking army. From secret groves, nymphs whisper warnings. Even mortals, tiny, fragile, foolish mortals, sense a storm coming and light fires on mountaintops to pray. Historians still debate whether these myths grew from the echoes of real volcanic eruptions or meteor storms that terrified early Greeks. The imagery, fire from heaven, mountains breaking, feels too vivid to be pure invention. Maybe the sky really did split once, and memory turned it into myth. Meanwhile, the Titans rally. Oceanus, the endless river, Hyperion, who blazes like the dawn, and Iapetus, whose shadow clings to everything he touches. They all rise beside Cronus, furious and magnificent. The world trembles under their tread. Zeus stands at the edge of a cliff, watching the horizon flicker red. Hera steps beside him. "You're not ready," she murmurs. "Neither are they," he replies, lips curling. "That's the point." The first clash is sound before sight, a deep, endless rumble. Then the sky splits. Bolts of raw power streak across the world. You can't tell where light ends and destruction begins. Zeus throws lightning for the first time in earnest, his body arcing with it. It feels almost accidental, wild, thrilling, barely under control. Poseidon hurls waves high as mountains. Hades opens cracks in the ground that swallow legions of Titans whole. For 10 years, the war shakes heaven and earth. You drift between battlefields, rivers turn to steam, forests scorched to glass, stars flickering from the heat. At night, the younger gods gather around campfires, exhausted but exhilarated. Demeter hums softly, coaxing a few stubborn flowers from the ash. "Life goes on," she says. It's both comfort and rebellion. There's a moment when it almost ends badly. Cronus, furious, calls down the ancient night, Erebus itself, to smother Zeus's light. The world plunges into shadow. You feel cold creep into your bones, even though you don't technically have any here. But then, from beneath the mountains, the Cyclopes rise, breaking their chains. In their hands gleam gifts, thunderbolts for Zeus, a trident for Poseidon, a helmet of invisibility for Hades, the tools that will define gods for millennia. Zeus takes the bolts, their tips glowing white-hot. The Cyclopes bow. "Use them well." Argis says. They remember where they were forged. It's a neat mythological detail, one mainstream historians point to as a symbolic birth of technology. Fire harnessed by intellect, not fear. But on a simple level, it's just really cool that a thunderbolt has a brand name. The next battle isn't fought with armies, it's fought with symbols. Zeus in the sky, Poseidon across the sea, Hades in the shadows. Cronus' strength begins to falter. His throne cracks. The stars themselves seem to lean toward Zeus's light. Finally, on the slopes of Mount Olympus, Zeus faces his father one last time. The air quivers with pressure, the ground bleeding sparks. Cronus raises his sickle, the same blade he once used to wound Uranus, but Zeus catches it mid-swing, thunder singing through his veins. You were right, Zeus says, lightning blooming behind him. The son always replaces the father. He hurls the bolt. The impact doesn't explode, it expands. Soundless, endless light washes over the mountain, bleaching even your thoughts for a moment. When it fades, Cronus lies still. The Titans are broken, their roars fading into history. The younger gods stand in silence, staring at what they've done. Hera whispers, "Now what?" Zeus looks up at the empty sky. "Now," he says, "we build something better." You're not sure whether to believe him, but for the first time, the heavens look peaceful. Clouds drift lazily, like they've been waiting to rest. The war is over, but peace, as you'll soon learn, comes with its own storms. You can still smell the smoke of the war in the air, like metal and ozone and old rain that never quite fell. The Titans lie bound in the depths of Tartarus now, each one chained by a storm older than justice. You drift above them for a moment, watching their massive forms twist in uneasy sleep. Cronus, once the devourer, now stares blankly into the dark. Every so often, a flicker of lightning seeps through the cracks, a silent reminder that his youngest son now rules the sky he once feared. Zeus stands at the summit of Mount Olympus, wind tugging at his hair, the air thick with the scent of burned stone. Behind him, his brothers and sisters look weary, but unbowed. For the first time, there's quiet, a strange, ringing silence that feels almost holy. But peace, as you know, doesn't last long when immortals are involved. The next step is division, because even gods need property lines. You follow the siblings as they gather around a boulder, its surface slick with condensation. It's Hestia who breaks the silence. "We can't all rule," she says gently. "The world needs balance." Zeus nods, tossing a handful of pebbles into the air. Then we draw lots. It's casual, almost playful, but the words carry weight. Each god takes a carved stone from a pouch. The moment feels strangely human, like a family deciding who gets the car on weekends. Except the car is the universe. Poseidon's stone shines blue, the sea is his. Hades' glows black as obsidian, the underworld falls to him. Zeus's burns with white fire, he claims the sky. The earth, broad and fertile, remains shared among them all. Historians still argue whether this myth reflects ancient Greek geography or a political metaphor, each domain mirroring city-state alliances or divine archetypes carved from real-world fears. Either way, it's bureaucracy with lightning bolts. The siblings nod solemnly, but you can feel the tension rippling underneath. Hades, always quiet, gives a small, sharp smile. "You always did like the view from above," he murmurs to Zeus. Zeus shrugs. "Someone has to keep watch." Poseidon snorts. "Just don't send rain when I'm in a good mood." "Or earthquakes when I'm not," Zeus replies, half grinning. And for a heartbeat, it feels almost like family again, chaotic, snarky, but bound together by shared victory. Then comes the real task, building a home for the gods. The war has torn the world open, and new mountains have risen like fresh scars. One of them gleams brighter than the rest, its peak lost in drifting cloud. "Olympus," murmurs Hera. "It's perfect." You drift upward, following them as they ascend. The climb is long but effortless. The air thins to crystal. When they reach the summit, the view stretches forever, rolling seas, shadowed underworld, and green earth spinning gently below. Zeus raises his arm, and lightning forks through the clouds, shaping marble from mist. Pillars rise, roofs shimmer, fountains burst into song. In minutes, the first palace of Olympus stands gleaming in the dawn. A fun little fringe tidbit says that early Greeks might have actually believed Mount Olympus had divine weather, constant clouds, booming echoes, flashes of unexplained light. Some ancient travelers swore they heard laughter in the storms. You like to imagine them squinting up, thinking, "Ah, the gods are at it again." You enter the newborn halls. Golden tiles hum beneath your feet. Walls glow faintly, alive with power. Each sibling chooses a space. Hestia tends the central hearth, her fire calm and steady. Demeter shapes gardens on the terraces, coaxing wheat and flowers to bloom from bare rock. Hera claims chambers near Zeus's throne, though the way she glances at him suggests she's already planning arguments. Zeus himself stands on the highest balcony, staring out over everything. His hand rests on a lightning bolt, still warm from the forge of the Cyclopes. "It's strange," he says, half to himself. "The war's done, but I can't shake the sound of thunder." "You are thunder," Hera says softly behind him. He laughs, though it's not a joyful sound. Maybe that's the problem. For a while, Olympus glows with harmony. The younger gods visit, bringing music and wine. Apollo plays the first notes that will ever echo through myth. Artemis sharpens her arrows by moonlight. Hermes, still just a mischievous rumor of a god at this point, will soon arrive to stir things up. But for now, everything feels new, bright, and full of promise. Historians still debate whether Mount Olympus represents a real geographic site or a mythic symbol of divine hierarchy. To the ancient Greeks, it was both heaven and bureaucracy, an eternal meeting that never quite adjourns. Zeus hosts a grand feast to seal their new order. Platters of ambrosia glow gold. Goblets overflow with nectar that smells faintly of honey and ozone. Music hums through the air like a heartbeat. You can feel the beginnings of ritual forming. Banquets that mortals will someday mimic. Festivals to honor their capricious gods. But beneath the laughter, Zeus watches the horizon. The world below is young, restless, and imperfect. Mortals struggle, titans stir in their prisons, and storms still whisper his name. You sense the weight settling on his shoulders, the cost of being the sky's new keeper. A nymph approaches with a bowl of water, clear as crystal. She dips her hand and lets it fall, drop by drop, into a bronze basin. Each drop shimmers into an image: fields, rivers, villages, mortals looking up at the clouds. "They already pray to you," she says quietly. "They think you control everything." Zeus stares into the basin, watching lightning flicker far away. "Maybe I do," he murmurs. "Or maybe they just need someone to blame when the rain doesn't come." You realize then that divinity, at least in Greece, is a full-time job, part weather service, part therapist, part cosmic referee. As night falls on Olympus, the new gods gather around Hestia's hearth. The flames crackle softly, casting long shadows on the marble. Zeus gazes into the fire, thoughtful. The others talk, laugh, squabble, but his mind is elsewhere, already listening to the hum of storms building on the edges of creation. Somewhere below, mortals huddle in huts, staring up at the same sky. To them, Zeus's lightning is terrifying and holy, a sign that someone up there is watching. To Zeus, it's just the sound of responsibility. And as the last sparks of the feast fade into the night, you can sense it, the calm before another kind of storm, the one that comes not from war, but from power itself. The marble floors of Olympus still hum faintly from the celebration, like the aftertaste of thunder. Yet, as you wander through the divine corridors, a new kind of tension has taken root, quieter, subtler, but no less dangerous. The war might be over, but now comes the harder part, ruling the cosmos without tearing it apart again. Zeus sits alone on his throne, its back carved with storm clouds and eagle wings. The light through the high windows catches in his hair, gilding him in authority. But the look on his face is the same one mortals wear when the bills come due after a party. Power feels different in the morning. You step closer, feeling the electric pulse of his thoughts. Below him, the world sprawls, a glittering patchwork of seas, forests, and trembling civilizations just beginning to name their gods. His brothers keep to their domains, Poseidon content with his ocean palaces, Hades brooding in the depths. The sisters keep the hearth, the harvest, the order of things. Yet all of them turn, now and then, to look at the sky to him, for direction. Historians still argue whether this new divine order symbolized the birth of monarchy in Greek consciousness, the idea that one ruler could bind chaos through law. Others think it's just poetic shorthand for weather dependency. The sky rules because rain decides who eats. Either way, Zeus has become the ultimate meteorological monarch. He gazes toward the horizon where the sea glints like liquid sapphire. Balance, he mutters. The world needs balance. That's when you notice the great bronze jar beside the throne, new, polished, and humming with potential. Inside it, invisible currents swirl. Thunder, lightning, wind, rain. The Cyclopes forged it after the war, a kind of cosmic control panel for the skies. One lever summons storms, another releases dew. Zeus keeps it close, but his fingers hover over it with hesitation, as though he knows that once you start controlling everything, you'll never stop. Down below, mortals begin to notice the changes. Crops flourish, rivers behave, seasons align. Fishermen raise their faces to thank the unseen king, who brings fair winds. Temples begin to appear, first crude stone circles, then more elaborate sanctuaries with carved columns and smoking altars. From your vantage point, they look like tiny candles flickering across the land. Do they please you? Hera asks from behind him. They flatter me, Zeus replies, smirking. But I suppose that's the point. Hera steps closer, her presence regal but edged with unease. Flattery breeds expectation. They'll beg for rain one day, then curse you for lightning the next. He turns to her, eyes bright as stars. Then I'll remind them who they're speaking to. You can tell she doesn't like that answer, but she says nothing. Instead, she gestures toward a shimmering curtain of air beside the throne. The world is divided, she says. You and your brothers drew your lots. But what of the rest? The creatures, the winds, the fates? Zeus nods. They'll have their places too. He rises, stretching out his arms. Clouds gather around his shoulders, obedient and heavy. You drift beside him as he steps to the edge of Olympus and looks down upon creation, like a painter surveying a half-finished mural. Let there be order, he says softly, and the world listens. Mountains settle into their shapes. Rivers find their beds. The seasons begin to hum in rhythm. You can almost feel the earth sigh in relief. But balance never comes free. As the land grows steady, the underworld deepens, shadows thickening under Hades' rule. The sea becomes restless, Poseidon's mood stirring its depths. Every act of order births its opposite, because that's how myth, and maybe life, works. A quirky fringe theory claims that the three brothers' domains, sky, sea, and underworld, reflect the tripartite model of the human soul, mind, emotion, and instinct, which would make Zeus not just the ruler of heaven, but of human thought itself. You imagine him scrolling through people's brains like weather apps, adjusting a few moods for dramatic effect. Days on Olympus begin to take form. Hermes, newly born from Maya's cave, starts darting around with messages. Demeter teaches mortals to plant grain. Hestia tends the hearth that keeps divine politics from freezing over entirely. And Hera watches. There's a sharpness to her now, a quiet calculation. She knows that Zeus, for all his thunder, is still new at this. And in a world built on hierarchy, someone always tries to climb the ladder, or tip it. At first, Zeus's rule is fair. He visits mortals in disguise, listens to their prayers, even helps them now and then. But the thrill of power begins to curl through him like static. Each flash of lightning, each rumble of thunder, it feels good. Addictive. You catch him one evening, standing at the edge of the clouds, throwing bolts just to watch them dance. The light glints off his grin. I could do this forever, he says, half to himself. That's what they all say. Hera murmurs from the shadows. Historians still debate whether Zeus's early myths paint him as benevolent or tyrannical. The truth, as always, lies somewhere between. He's the weather made flesh, sometimes kind, sometimes catastrophic, but always necessary. One afternoon, Hermes brings news. The Cyclopes have crafted gifts for the younger gods, tokens of gratitude and allegiance. For Athena, a shining spear that hums with intellect. For Apollo, a bow strung with sunlight. For Artemis, its silver twin. Zeus accepts their offerings, but you can tell he's thinking about something else. He gazes down at the world again, eyes narrowing. It's too quiet, he says. Too obedient. You miss the war, Hera says flatly. Maybe I miss the purpose. It's a rare confession, and you almost feel sorry for him. To be the king of gods is to win forever, and winning forever can be lonely work. A storm rolls in, drawn by his mood. Rain begins to fall over Greece, soft at first, then wild. Mortals cheer and curse in equal measure. For them, the thunder means life and danger, blessing and punishment, Zeus's dual nature in every drop. As night settles, you drift past the marble columns and see him sitting by Hestia's fire, shoulders slumped, eyes unfocused. The firelight flickers against his face, and for a fleeting moment, he looks almost mortal, just a tired man wondering if ruling the sky is really worth the static. But when dawn breaks, the doubt vanishes. Lightning crowns the horizon again, steady and golden. Zeus rises, stretching, confident once more. Balance may be fragile, but for now it holds. And somewhere deep in Tartarus, a faint rumble answers, Cronus stirring in his chains, as if reminding his son that storms, no matter how divine, always come back around. The mornings on Olympus smell like fresh stone, faintly of ozone, and always, always faintly of ambition. You float past the marble halls, where the gods now settle into routines that are at once eternal and absurdly bureaucratic. Zeus paces, lightning flickering along his fingers, muttering about taxes he doesn't collect and disputes he doesn't really mediate, but which must still be resolved. Olympus, as it turns out, is less cloud palace and more divine office. Hera sits nearby, meticulously organizing the calendars of the gods, which involve birthdays, sacrifices, thunderstorms, eclipses, and the occasional punish that mortal day. You catch a glimpse of a spreadsheet etched into stone, columns for each immortal with tick marks and thunder, rain, and scolding. You blink, wondering if Excel was always meant for this. Historians still argue whether these depictions of Olympus reflect actual civic ideals, temples as mirrors for Greek political structures, or just fanciful metaphors for how human society understood order. Either way, it's a workplace with way too much power concentrated in one desk chair. Zeus greets Hermes darting in and out with messages. Mortals' prayers, letters, and omens arrive in scrolls, sealed jars, and occasionally, if a prankster is involved, a very confused pigeon. Hermes flits past, whispering, "A sacrifice in Phocis. Someone forgot the goat." And you watch Zeus sigh, his expression caught between exasperation and amusement. "Send a cloud," he mutters, "and remind them whose idea this was." Meanwhile, Demeter fusses over her gardens, tending wheat and barley as if the crops themselves are delicate pets. Apollo practices his lyre, each note resonating through the palace, reminding all that culture is, like power, something that cannot be ignored. Artemis sharpens arrows and observes the forest from a balcony, her eyes flicking toward the horizon. Even immortals like routine, and in Olympus, routine often feels as heavy as battle armor. But not everything is serious. You notice the younger gods teasing each other, Dionysus, still an infant of myth, spilling nectar and giggling, Hephaestus hammering at sparks, more curious than destructive, and Aphrodite wandering the halls, making mischief in ways both subtle and eyebrow-raising. In the quiet of the throne room, Zeus pauses. He lifts his hand, and clouds curl around his fingertips like lazy smoke. He shapes small flashes of lightning just to see them dance, a habit from the war that never quite leaves him. You can see why Hera watches with a mixture of pride and mild exasperation. There is the sky's king, amused with his own toys, while the universe waits. There's a fringe story, whispered in the darker corners of myth, that Zeus invented storms partly out of boredom, throwing lightning to entertain himself when ambrosia felt stale. Whether true or just poetic flair, it paints him as terrifyingly relatable, powerful, immortal, and occasionally in need of a hobby. A soft, almost imperceptible hum fills the halls. You follow it to the northern terrace, where Hades converses quietly with Persephone. They speak of balance, judgment, and the mortal souls trickling into the underworld below. Zeus looks down at the sea of stars and realizes that ruling isn't just the sky. It's the space between life and death, the ebb of seasons, the laughter of mortals, the heartbeat of animals, and the whisper of storms yet to come. Even Poseidon strolls past, sending miniature tsunamis into the fountains of Olympus, just to test whether the infrastructure holds. Zeus doesn't intervene. It's polite restraint, Olympian civility 101. Yet, in the back of his mind, he's already thinking ahead, imagining future festivals, offerings, and the delicate management of divine egos. And while the palace buzzes with quiet chaos, you notice the clever tension building in Olympus. A god's power is never just about strength. It's about influence, patience, and, as Matisse once taught, cunning. You glimpse the lessons of the cave resurfacing. To rule well, you must understand both fear and desire, laughter and discipline, clouds and thunder. Historians still debate whether these domestic scenes are purely symbolic, Olympus as metaphor for Greek city-states, or if they preserve fragments of real, ritualized hierarchy among ancient priestly classes. Either way, the gods' daily routines reveal a truth. Divinity is as much about administration as it is about awe. As night falls, Zeus pauses by the balcony again. The air is cool, scented faintly with pine and the distant sea. Below, mortals light fires and whisper prayers, some asking for rain, some for sun. Each flicker of their hope and fear ripples up, brushing against his consciousness. He smiles faintly, a little tired, a little amused. Power, he realizes, is never static. It's a living, breathing negotiation, and Olympus, for all its marble glory, is its headquarters. The sky darkens to deep indigo, stars shimmering like tiny offerings. Zeus looks at the horizon where clouds are beginning to gather. Somewhere out there, storms will form. Somewhere, mortals will feel the first drips. And somewhere, the echoes of the Titanomachy still rattle in the stone below. But here, in the palace of Olympus, order has taken root, and for now, even the thunder seems content to rest. The palace of Olympus shimmers under the early morning sun, a place alive with movement, yet you can feel a tension that isn't thunder. Zeus strides along the balcony, his hair like wind-tossed clouds, eyes flicking toward the horizon. The world below is quiet for now, but he knows that peace is temporary. The mortals stir in their villages, farmers plow fields, merchants haggle over olives, and children run with dogs barking at their heels, all oblivious to the invisible king shaping their fates. You follow him as he paces, thinking of Cronus and the Titans imprisoned in Tartarus. The weight of his victory presses on him. It's one thing to win a war. It's another to hold the peace afterward. Each Titan, chained in shadow, hums with quiet resentment, and Zeus knows it's only a matter of time before even the smallest spark could ignite rebellion. Historians still debate whether the Titanomachy represents political allegory, with older and newer religious orders symbolizing social evolution, or if it's simply a story of familial revenge. Either way, Zeus's position is precarious. Absolute power tempered by the memory of conflict, tempered by responsibility. Amid the serious duties, playful chaos persists. Hermes zips in, delivering tidings from the mortals, a village overwatered by Poseidon, an olive harvest destroyed by wind, and a priest who mispronounced a prayer to Demeter. Zeus raises an eyebrow, the faintest grin tugging at his lips. Even kings of gods enjoy a little absurdity. Then there's Hera. She approaches quietly, her robes flowing, her presence commanding attention without a word. "You've been distracted," she says softly, though her eyes burn with sharp calculation. "You must consider the alliances, the marriages, the worshippers, and the ceremonies. All of it requires your attention." Zeus nods, watching the clouds curl at the edges of Olympus. "I know, but I also need to test them." And test them he does. You drift beside him as he surveys mortals, sending small challenges. A sudden thunderstorm over a stubborn field, a flash of lightning near a wayward ship, a sudden wind that scatters grain. Each act is controlled, subtle, like a teacher testing pupils, yet the consequences ripple unpredictably. There's a quirky footnote in the myths. Zeus is said to have occasionally disguised himself as ordinary animals to wander among humans, observing their behavior firsthand. Scholars still argue whether this reflects religious practice, rituals of divine observation, or just storytelling flair meant to entertain and teach morals. Either way, it makes Zeus strangely relatable, like a cosmic inspector checking on the world. You follow him as he returns to Olympus, the first tremors of conflict already whispering from the depths of the earth. Hades stirs in the underworld, Poseidon growls from the sea, and the mortals' prayers come faster, each one a thread pulling at the fabric of divinity. Zeus rises to the highest balcony, fingertips brushing the clouds. He knows he cannot answer every call, cannot manage every desire, yet he must. A faint rumble rolls through the sky, a reminder of the war that birthed him. Lightning arcs faintly, illuminating the palace, the clouds, the distant peaks of mountains, and the restless ocean. The power hums through him, a reminder that being king of gods is a responsibility that never sleeps. And then comes a subtle reminder of the family he now rules with. Hera's sharp gaze, Artemis's quiet detachment, Apollo's melodic patience, and Demeter's constant nurturing. Even as the sky bends to his will, Zeus realizes that influence is rarely unilateral. Ruling is negotiation, strategy, and diplomacy wrapped in the guise of omnipotence. Night falls slowly, stars pricking the sky with gentle light. You drift with Zeus across Olympus as he surveys the world, noting the patterns of rivers, the swaying of forests, the flicker of village fires. It is beautiful, fragile, and fleeting, everything a god must guard. A fringe idea in myth suggests that these observations, Zeus watching mortals in quiet contemplation, reflect an early human understanding of oversight, responsibility, and the tension between freedom and order. Or perhaps it's simply a poetic reminder that even gods must pause to admire their handiwork. As darkness deepens, Zeus stands silent, the rumble of clouds and distant storms resonating around him. The palace glows faintly in moonlight, a beacon of power and vigilance. And somewhere in Tartarus and the farthest oceans, hints of unrest whisper, waiting for the king of Olympus to notice. Even as Olympus settles into its strange rhythm, Zeus discovers that power has a habit of attracting complications. You follow him across the golden halls as he drifts from balcony to balcony, watching the world below. His domain stretches from sunlit plains to distant, storm-racked islands, yet he can never fully escape the sense that everything, everywhere, demands his attention. And of course, attention from Zeus often comes with unintended consequences. The first of these is love, messy, chaotic, and unavoidable. A goddess, a mortal, or sometimes both, will catch his eye, and suddenly the sky itself seems to lean closer. You watch him hover above a sparkling river where a nymph bends to gather water, sunlight glinting through her hair. Zeus feels a tug at his chest, and before you know it, he's shifting forms, a bull, a swan, even mist, anything to charm or pursue, because direct approaches rarely work in Olympus. This is the beginning of the legendary chaos of Zeus's romances. You can see why mortals would have been both fascinated and terrified. Lightning might strike at any moment, yes, but so might divine obsession. Historians still argue whether these stories were cautionary tales about unchecked desire or just the ancient Greek version of soap opera. Either way, they paint Zeus as irresistibly magnetic and occasionally reckless, even for a god. Take Europa, for instance. You float over a sunlit meadow as she laughs, a mortal princess unaware that her path is about to be reshaped by a god in disguise, a magnificent white bull. The animal, calm and gentle, allows her to climb onto its back. Then, with a soft snort, it carries her across the sparkling sea. The winds tug playfully at her hair, and the waves glint like shattered glass. It's absurd, it's beautiful, and it will eventually give a continent her name. Elsewhere, mortal and divine lives tangle further. Io, a priestess, finds herself transformed into a cow, an unfortunate side effect of Zeus attempting to hide his infatuation from Hera. You follow her through forests and plains, her eyes wide and filled with confusion. A gadfly constantly stings her, making her life a slow, buzzing journey of endurance. Meanwhile, Zeus watches from the clouds, half anxious, half regretful, as his own whims ripple through the world below. Fringe scholars sometimes suggest these myths encode a proto-environmental consciousness, transformation, wandering, and natural forces representing human impact on animals and landscapes. Others just smile and call it classic drama. Either way, it's impossible not to notice the pattern. Where Zeus's desires touch, chaos follows. Even Hera, now queen of Olympus, begins to make subtle moves. She watches her husband's antics from afar, a mixture of indignation and strategy brewing in her gaze. Her revenge is slow, meticulous, and terrifyingly patient, a perfect counterpoint to Zeus's impulsive thunder. You can almost feel the tension in the palace air, like static before a storm. The siblings react in their own ways. Demeter sighs and rolls her eyes, muttering about fertility and order. Apollo shakes his head, tuning his lyre to more melancholy notes. Artemis, ever detached, watches the horizon, her arrows sharp and precise, almost as if she's silently considering intervention. Even the younger gods, like Hermes and Dionysus, chuckle quietly at the unfolding dramas, amused by the mortal chaos his relationships provoke. You hover above Zeus as he considers his next move. Lightning flickers from his fingertips, tiny sparks reflecting his restless energy. He realizes that ruling the sky is not just about thunderbolts and storms. It's about influence, desire, and negotiation. Every flirtation, every secretive glance, every transformation of a mortal or nymph shapes the world below. There's a playful detail in some of the later myths. Zeus would sometimes take forms so ridiculous, a golden shower, a talking bull, even a fly, to pursue his desires. Fringe historians argue this reflects both the Greeks' humor and their understanding that divine power could be absurdly elastic. You imagine him, above a field, grinning at his own ridiculous creativity. By now, Olympus has begun to feel lived in, and Zeus's romances create tension that makes it all more human. Even gods, it seems, cannot escape the entanglements of affection and the consequences of impulsive passion. These love stories, chaotic as they are, will echo through myths for centuries, shaping not just destinies, but the very map of the world. And as you drift above the clouds with him, it becomes clear. Ruling the heavens is as much about balancing storms of the heart as it is about storms in the sky. Thunder might command obedience, but love, divine, mortal, or complicated, is the unpredictable force that truly tests a god. The nights on Olympus are quieter than you might expect, at least in the hallways, though the air always hums with latent energy. Zeus drifts from balcony to balcony, tracing the constellations that stretch endlessly above. Stars glitter faintly, like the eyes of mortals who have yet to realize they are being watched. He tilts his head, imagining the lives below, farmers, fishermen, kings, thieves, lovers, all unaware of the threads of fate subtly bending toward his will. You follow him down corridors lined with gold and marble, where quiet moments of domesticity unfold. Hestia tends the hearth, flames crackling softly, sending warm glimmers across polished floors. Demeter's gardens exude the scent of ripening fruit and wet earth, and you almost feel like you're stepping through a dream, one where divinity and life intertwine seamlessly. But Zeus is restless. The war is over, yes, but power is rarely soothing. He knows that ruling isn't simply about commanding thunder and lightning. It's about vigilance, calculation, and managing relationships both divine and mortal. He watches the horizon, the faintest tension in his jaw. Somewhere, a storm waits, and the tremors of history ripple up from the earth below. Historians still debate whether the myths of Zeus's oversight of mortals reflect genuine early Greek thought about leadership, morality, and justice, or if they are simply entertaining storytelling. Either way, the pattern is clear. Zeus observes, tests, and occasionally manipulates, a god of both omnipotence and pragmatism. A nymph arrives, carrying tidings from the world below. A village near the coastline has prayed for rain, and a neighboring one curses the sky for wind that ruined harvests. Zeus studies their petitions, his eyes narrowing. One wave of his hand summons a gentle breeze to correct the imbalance, and you feel the faint thrill of power flowing through him. Even small acts of intervention carry monumental consequences. Then there's love, ever the unpredictable variable. Mortals and goddesses alike attract his attention, and Zeus cannot resist. You watch as he drifts through clouds toward a sun-dappled valley where a maiden bends to gather flowers. He shifts forms, a golden eagle, a shimmering mist, approaching her in ways subtle and enchanting. Every action creates ripples, reshaping destinies he can barely predict. Fringe myths whisper that Zeus's romantic escapades were not only lessons in desire, but reflections of natural cycles, rainfalls and floods, fertility and famine, all tied to his whims. Scholars still argue whether these stories encode environmental understanding or merely provide entertainment for the imagination. Either interpretation underscores the connection between godly caprice and mortal experience. Hera, meanwhile, watches from her balcony, arms crossed, her expression one of quiet, simmering strategy. She knows her husband's impulses, and she plans accordingly, patiently, meticulously. Artemis and Apollo offer counsel in their own ways, balancing observation with moral guidance, though neither fully constrains Zeus's choices. As night deepens, Zeus stands at the edge of Olympus, lightning flickering faintly at his fingertips. The world below sleeps under his gaze, each heartbeat of humanity a whisper against eternity. Even in calm, the tension of power hums through him. Every mortal decision, every titan stir in Tartarus, every restless sea is a reminder that ruling the heavens is not a task for the complacent. And yet, there is a beauty in this vigilance. Clouds drift like silver curtains. The moon hangs like a quiet sentinel, and somewhere in the distance, the faint rumble of a storm hints at the raw, wild energy that makes him what he is. Zeus inhales, feeling the pulse of both cosmos and mortal world beneath him. For now, the palace sleeps under his watch. But you know that with dawn, with desire, with the whispers of titans and mortals alike, Olympus will awaken again, full of intrigue, ambition, and the quiet hum of ever-present divine power. The first light of dawn stretches across Olympus like a pale brushstroke, turning the marble palace into a prism of soft golds and pinks. You drift alongside Zeus as he steps onto the highest balcony, watching the world awaken. Farmers sing as they till their fields, rivers shimmer with the reflection of the rising sun, and the distant sea dances with the promise of a new day. To an ordinary observer, it seems serene, almost mundane, but you know better. Every element, every movement, is under the careful, restless gaze of the sky's king. Zeus runs his fingers along the clouds, feeling the subtle shift of air currents, imagining the paths storms might take. A soft breeze caresses his cheek, carrying the scent of pine and wet earth from the world below. There's satisfaction in shaping the elements, but there's also a creeping weight. Every action, even gentle, has consequences. A gust of wind might topple a harvest, a sudden cloudburst might erase a fisherman's haul, and Zeus, for all his wisdom, can't control every ripple. Historians still argue whether these mythic interactions between gods and mortals symbolize an early understanding of cause and effect, or if they're just stories meant to dramatize divine influence. Either way, you sense the subtle commentary. Power is never absolute, and observation alone is insufficient. Below, mortals continue their morning routines. A shepherd whistles to his flock, unaware that Zeus watches, weighing the fairness of the sky's rain. A woman draws water from a well, her reflection rippling in the basin, tiny and fleeting. Zeus imagines touching each of these lives, nudging them gently, and the temptation is almost irresistible. The Cyclope's thunderbolts hum faintly in the palace, a reminder that even the tiniest spark can cascade into a storm. Then there's love again, the ever-present complicating factor. Zeus turns his gaze to a distant valley where a mortal maiden gathers flowers. He smiles faintly, already contemplating which form to assume: a cloud, a dove, a shimmering mist. The possibilities are endless, and the consequences even more so. Europa, Io, Leda, names that will echo through history, all seeds of unpredictable chaos sown by desire. Fringe scholars sometimes suggest these myths reflect a sophisticated understanding of human psychology, temptation, obsession, and the consequences of unchecked impulses, dramatized through divine narrative. You feel that in this moment, Zeus is not just ruling the sky. He is experimenting with the bounds of influence and attraction. Hera, meanwhile, watches from a shadowed balcony. Her expression is calm, almost patient, but you can feel the undercurrent of strategy. Every glance, every soft word, carries weight. She understands that controlling Zeus is impossible, but guiding him subtly, that she can attempt. The siblings stir as the day unfolds. Apollo practices his lyre, sending golden notes across Olympus. Artemis tends the forests and her arrows. Demeter nurtures crops and fertility, and Hestia keeps the hearth, the quiet center that holds divine family life together. Even Poseidon, far away, sends gentle waves to test his reach, a reminder that the sea can never be ignored. Zeus watches all of it and feels the hum of connection, the delicate web that ties heaven, earth, and underworld together. Every choice he makes, every storm he shapes, and every whisper of desire sets ripples through this living tapestry. The weight of eternity presses lightly against him, and yet there is exhilaration in knowing that his hand guides the world's rhythm. As the sun climbs higher, Zeus pauses to admire the horizon. The clouds gather softly, a hint of storms yet to come, a reminder of the power he wields and the responsibility he bears. For now, Olympus breathes in quiet harmony, but you can sense the tension beneath, the latent energy waiting to ignite again, as the balance of gods, mortals, and titans continues to unfold. The palace corridors of Olympus echo faintly with the sounds of gods preparing for the day, a rhythm both eternal and oddly domestic. Zeus drifts past Hestia's hearth, where flames lick gently at the edges of the marble hearth, sending sparks into the air like tiny stars. There's a smell of smoke and warmth, grounding him for a moment in a version of peace that feels almost fleeting. You watch him pause, tracing a fingertip along the polished surface of a column, catching the faint hum of the mountain beneath. The undercurrent of responsibility tugs at him. Even now, after battles won and titans chained, the world's balance depends on his vigilance. A nudge too strong, a storm misdirected, or a withheld favor could ripple catastrophically through mortal lives. Zeus's fingers twitch with barely restrained energy, the taste of thunder lingering on his lips. Historians still debate whether these daily rituals and myths reflect ancient Greek ideals of leadership and justice, or if they are imaginative storytelling devices to illustrate omnipotence and influence. Either way, the themes are clear. Power without care is perilous, and a god's attention shapes the universe in ways subtle and profound. You follow him to the terrace, where Apollo tunes his lyre, letting notes ripple across the palace like golden liquid. Artemis practices silently, her arrows gleaming under the rising sun. Even the young Hermes zips about, delivering messages to mortals and gods alike, leaving trails of laughter in his wake. It's a scene of calm productivity, yet you can feel Zeus's restless energy hovering over it all like a storm just beginning. A ripple of curiosity and mischief stirs. Zeus notices a flock of birds gliding over the mountaintops and sends a playful bolt of lightning along their path. The birds scatter with a flurry of feathers, and Zeus grins at the minor chaos he's orchestrated. Hera's eyes, from a shadowed balcony, narrow imperceptibly. She doesn't intervene, but her expression is one of quiet calculation, noting each act and storing it for later, as she always does. Mortals in the valleys below stir as well. Farmers emerge, checking their fields for rain and sun. Shepherds whistle to flocks that graze across rolling hills. Children laugh by riverbanks, their tiny splashes echoing faintly like music. Zeus observes all of it with fascination, the intersection of order, chance, and human resilience. He is both puppet master and spectator, wielding influence while watching outcomes unfold in unpredictable ways. Then, as is always the case, love intrudes. You watch Zeus turn his gaze toward a maiden tending flowers in a valley far below. The sunlight catches her hair, glinting like gold, and Zeus's pulse quickens. He considers form, a swan, a bull, or mist drifting among the blooms. Each option carries a different consequence, each choice setting ripples through time and space. Europa, Io, and Leda remain future legends, their lives already altered by divine curiosity. Fringe scholars suggest these stories are more than romantic drama. They encode human awareness of cause, effect, and responsibility. Some argue that transformations in myth reflect natural phenomena, like floods or migration, dramatized through divine storytelling. Either way, the narrative threads weave lessons in power, desire, and consequence. By midday, Zeus steps back onto Olympus's balconies, surveying the world below. Clouds curl and gather, the ocean shimmers under Poseidon's distant influence, and the underworld murmurs faintly in Hades's domain. You feel the weight of all this influence pressing against him, yet he carries it with quiet authority. For a god, vigilance is never optional. Every choice echoes an eternity, and Olympus stands as both bastion and reminder. Afternoons on Olympus are deceptively calm, but you can sense the tension humming under the surface, like a wire pulled taut. Zeus wanders along the terraces, fingers brushing the wind as it curls around marble pillars, coaxing currents into playful spirals. It's beautiful, mesmerizing, and exhausting if you're responsible for orchestrating it all. The sun's warmth settles over Olympus, carrying scents of pine, fresh water, and the faint metallic tang of storm energy, lingering from the thunderbolts Zeus tested earlier. You follow him as he pauses by the great bronze jar crafted by the Cyclopes, the container of raw celestial energy. Lightning hums faintly within, alive and restless, waiting for a command. Zeus studies it for a long moment, considering which storms to release and which to contain. The jar is a reminder that control is as much a burden as it is a privilege. Even the slightest misstep could ripple down to mortals, reshaping harvests, travel, or even entire battles between kings unaware of his gaze. Historians still debate whether these myths reflect ancient Greek understandings of cosmic order or simply poetic dramatizations of political hierarchy. Either way, Zeus embodies vigilance, the careful negotiation between omnipotence and responsibility, power and consequence. Below, mortals go about their routines. A fisherman hauls his nets, counting stars for luck. Children chase goats across hillsides. A farmer wipes sweat from his brow, watching clouds that might bring blessing or ruin. Zeus observes, not as a distant deity, but as a curious participant in the theater of life, guiding, nudging, sometimes intervening, always aware of the interconnectedness of all actions. And then, the ever-persistent complication, desire. Your gaze follows Zeus as he notices a maiden walking along a riverbank, her hair catching the sunlight. The wind brushes around her, teasing strands into a halo. Zeus considers the forms he might take, bull, eagle, or even a gentle mist curling around her steps. Every choice carries its own consequences, weaving new narratives into the tapestry of history. The consequences may be small, a missed harvest, a frightened flock, or monumental, like Europa's eventual voyage across the sea. Fringe mythologists sometimes argue these romantic escapades encode proto-psychological lessons, desire, curiosity, and the ethical consequences of action. Others suggest it reflects early human understanding of natural cycles, storms, floods, fertility, illustrated through divine whims. Either way, it adds a layer of unpredictability to his reign. Hera, as always, watches discreetly. Her eyes track every glance, every shift in form, every subtle interaction. Patience is her weapon, subtle influence her art. She knows the consequences of Zeus's whims and prepares accordingly, always planning, calculating, and occasionally scheming. The siblings go about their own work as well. Demeter tends gardens now vibrant with life. Apollo's lyre sends golden notes through the halls. Artemis sharpens her arrows in silent focus, and Hermes zips about delivering messages both mundane and urgent. Poseidon murmurs to the ocean. Hades stirs in his shadowy depths. The web of influence stretches out, complex and delicate. As the afternoon wanes, Zeus steps to Olympus's edge. Clouds curl under his fingers. Faint rumblings whisper in distant mountains. He smiles faintly, savoring the subtle dance of power, responsibility, and desire. Olympus may seem calm from afar, but the balance he maintains is fragile, and every moment, every choice, has the potential to tilt the world. Evening falls on Olympus with a softness that belies the constant undercurrent of power. You drift alongside Zeus as he strolls through the palace, catching the faint scent of pine, wet stone, and the lingering smoke of Hestia's hearth. The light changes gradually, bathing marble halls in amber hues that stretch and shift like living things. It's a quiet hour, deceptively peaceful, but you can feel the weight of eternity pressing at the edges of the palace. Zeus pauses by a balcony overlooking the mortal world, noting the rivers glinting like silver threads, forests moving gently in the breeze, and villages where fires flicker as humans prepare their evening meals. Every choice he has made, storms, protections, minor interventions, has threaded through this living mosaic, and yet the patterns remain incomplete. There's beauty here, but also unpredictability, and Zeus knows it. Historians still argue whether these nightly observations symbolize Greek ideas of divine oversight or were simply narrative devices to illustrate omnipotence. Either way, the ritual is telling, vigilance is eternal, and influence is both subtle and absolute. Your gaze shifts as Zeus notices a mortal couple on a hillside, whispering in the twilight. A smile tugs at his lips, and instinctively he considers his options. A gentle wind, a soft shimmer of lightning in the distance, or perhaps nothing at all, allowing their moment to exist untouched. Each decision carries ripples, reminding him, and you, that divinity is never just a matter of strength. It is negotiation, intervention, and subtle guidance. The tension between impulse and responsibility manifests elsewhere. Zeus's romances, still ongoing, create unpredictable chaos. He flits through the clouds, considering Europa, Io, and other future legends, weighing forms and approaches. The consequences of desire, playful or serious, reverberate through the mortal world. Fringe scholars argue these myths reflect early notions of moral cause and effect, while others see them as symbolic tales of natural phenomena, floods, fertility, storms, animated for storytelling. Either way, it's chaos wrapped in elegance. Hera watches silently from the shadows of a terrace. Her patience is unyielding, her gaze sharp. She tracks each flotation, each shift in cloud or form, every ripple of consequence. Her strategy is subtle, her presence felt rather than overt. In the delicate equilibrium of Olympus, she is the counterweight to Zeus's impulsive tendencies. Meanwhile, the other siblings move with their own purposes. Apollo practices his lyre, filling halls with golden notes that echo far beyond marble corridors. Artemis sharpens arrows while observing forests and hunting grounds. Demeter nurtures the gardens, coaxing plants to bloom under fading light. Hestia tends her hearth with unhurried care, maintaining the quiet center of the household. Poseidon sends waves into fountains, testing flow and motion. Hades moves in shadows, his presence a constant reminder that even victory can't erase vigilance. As night deepens, the first stars appear, faint and trembling against the darkening sky. Zeus steps to the highest balcony, feeling the electric hum of potential storms beneath his fingertips. A faint smile curves his lips. For now, Olympus rests, but he knows the balance is delicate, and the mortal world remains restless. And somewhere far below, whispers of titans, rumors of unrest, and the faint ripple of mortal desire hint at the trials yet to come. Power, desire, and responsibility, all entwined, await the dawn. The night stretches on Olympus like dark velvet, soft but charged with subtle electricity. Zeus walks along the palace's highest terraces, fingers trailing through the mist that curls around marble columns. There is a quiet rhythm here, a kind of cosmic lullaby, punctuated only by distant thunder or the faint rustle of wings as Hermes flits past. Even in stillness, you sense the underlying tension of a world under his watch, a delicate balance that could tip with the smallest gesture. Below, the mortal world slumbers uneasily. Fires flicker in villages, rivers murmur over rocks, and the wind carries scents of damp earth and blossoming flowers. Zeus watches, knowing that minor decisions can cascade unpredictably. A cloud released here, a light shower there, each act a negotiation with fate. The weight of his authority hums softly against the night air, a constant, invisible presence. Historians still argue whether the nightly attentiveness of Zeus reflects genuine early Greek notions of moral oversight, or if it's merely narrative embellishment. Either way, the myths emphasize that vigilance and influence are inseparable from responsibility, and even a god must measure every act. A soft light flickers in a distant valley where a mortal couple walks, hand in hand. Zeus considers intervening with a gentle gust of wind or perhaps a faint lightning shimmer for effect. Every choice carries consequence, even when subtle. He refrains this time, letting the moment exist naturally, a reminder that sometimes restraint is its own exercise of power. And then there's desire, ever a complicating factor. You watch him shift subtly, considering future interactions with Europa, Io, and Leda. Each romantic pursuit, playful or serious, sends ripples through the mortal realm. Fringe scholars have suggested these tales encode lessons about impulse, consequence, and the ethics of influence, while others interpret them as allegorical reflections of natural events, storms, floods, and fertility cycles dramatized through myth. Either way, they illustrate the unpredictability inherent in divine power. Hera observes from a shaded balcony, poised like a quiet storm herself. She tracks every action, every glimmer of interest, calculating future countermoves. Patience is her tool, subtlety her strength, and in the quiet halls of Olympus, her influence is as potent as any bolt of lightning. The siblings move in their own domains. Apollo's lyre sends warm, golden notes through the corridors. Artemis glides through shadowed groves, arrows in hand, ever vigilant. Demeter tends gardens glowing faintly in the moonlight. Hestia tends her hearth, steady and grounding. Poseidon's distant influence stirs ocean currents, and Hades murmurs in his underworld domain, a reminder that equilibrium requires attention on all fronts. Zeus pauses at the balcony edge, fingertips brushing the clouds as lightning hums faintly in the distance. The stars sparkle above, tiny beacons in the vast darkness. Somewhere in the shadows, echoes of Titan stir, mortals dream, and the unseen forces of the world shift imperceptibly. Balance is fragile, power is heavy, and yet he carries both with quiet authority. As the night deepens, you sense the palace itself holding its breath, waiting for dawn, for decisions, for the inevitable entanglement of desire, duty, and destiny. For Zeus, sleep is a distant luxury, vigilance is eternal, and the world spins endlessly beneath him. Dawn creeps over Olympus like liquid gold, spilling warmth across marble halls and terraces. You float beside Zeus as he stretches, feeling the electric hum of anticipation that always lingers before the first mortal stirrings. Clouds drift lazily around the palace, responding to the subtle gestures of his fingertips, each one a tiny negotiation with the weather, the seasons, and the unseen energies pulsing through the world below. The mortal realm awakens gradually. Farmers stretch and whistle to livestock, children chase stray goats, and rivers glint like threads of silver weaving across the landscape. Zeus watches it all with fascination, aware that each life, however small, carries weight. Even the tiniest gesture can ripple across fields, mountains, and towns. Responsibility feels tangible in the crisp morning air, a weight balanced delicately atop the shoulders of a god. Historians still debate whether these daily observations symbolize early Greek ideas of governance and moral oversight, or if they simply dramatize omnipotence. Either way, the story reinforces that authority is never passive, even for immortals. Power is a living negotiation, and Zeus is constantly attuned to its subtleties. You notice him surveying a valley where a village celebrates a modest harvest. Smoke rises from chimneys, mingling with morning mist, and he considers sending a soft rain to bless the crops further. Yet he pauses, contemplating the consequences of interference. In restraint lies its own form of wisdom, an awareness that even divine action must be tempered with patience. Love, as always, complicates matters. A young maiden gathers flowers nearby, her golden hair glinting in sunlight. Zeus considers which form to take, a bull, an eagle, or drifting mist, but hesitates, recognizing that every choice carries a chain of consequences. Europa, Io, and Leda are future echoes of this impulsive curiosity, their lives shaped by both desire and divine whim. Fringe scholars suggest that these romantic myths are allegories for natural cycles or proto-psychological explorations of impulse and consequence. Others argue they are entertaining cautionary tales, reflecting the Greeks' humor and moral imagination. Either way, they illustrate the unpredictable side of power, even for a god who controls thunder and lightning. Hera watches from a shadowed balcony, her posture calm but calculating. She traces patterns of influence quietly, storing knowledge for when action is necessary. Her patience is formidable, her strategy subtle, a foil to Zeus's impulsive tendencies. In Olympus, subtlety and foresight are just as important as raw power. The siblings continue their own duties. Apollo's lyre fills corridors with warmth and resonance. Artemis glides through forests with arrows sharp and steady. Demeter nurtures fields now glowing with life. Hestia maintains her hearth, and Poseidon stirs distant waves. Hades murmurs in shadow, a reminder of equilibrium beneath the surface. Zeus steps to Olympus's highest balcony, watching the first light glint on mountains and rivers. The hum of potential storms thrums beneath his fingertips. Somewhere mortals pray, somewhere titans stir, and somewhere destiny waits, weaving together power, desire, and consequence in the endless dance of existence. Balance is fragile, but for now it holds. The midday sun spreads across Olympus, painting marble terraces in sharp contrasts of light and shadow. You drift alongside Zeus as he paces slowly, the hum of electricity vibrating faintly through the air. Even in this calm, there is tension, the unspoken weight of authority, the invisible threads connecting mortals, titans, and gods. Every step he takes, every flicker of his gaze, resonates far below in fields, villages, and distant mountains. Below, mortals work and play. Farmers sweat over plows. Shepherds whistle to their flocks, noting clouds and wind. Children chase chickens through gardens, their laughter rising faintly like wind chimes. Zeus watches, sensing which interventions are necessary, which outcomes require nudges, and which must be left untouched. The balance is delicate, and he is keenly aware that omnipotence is nothing without restraint. Historians still debate whether these stories represent an early Greek conception of divine oversight or are merely narrative devices to illustrate omnipotence and responsibility. Either way, Zeus embodies vigilance, a god whose power is inseparable from the ethical weight it carries. A subtle ripple of mischief interrupts the afternoon calm. Zeus notices a nymph wandering through a meadow, sunlight bouncing off her hair. He considers how to approach, perhaps a cloud drifting around her, a shimmer of golden light, or a more tangible form like a bull or eagle. Each choice has consequences. Io, Europa, Leda, all futures shaped by similar whims. Fringe scholars suggest these myths explore proto-psychological themes, desire, curiosity, and the ethical implications of influence. Others interpret the transformations as metaphors for natural phenomena, storms, floods, fertility, illustrated through divine narrative. Either way, the stories highlight the unpredictability inherent in exercising power. Hera, ever watchful, observes quietly from her balcony. Her calm demeanor conceals strategy. She stores knowledge, waits for the right moment to act, and ensures that her influence tempers Zeus's impulses. Her subtlety is a counterbalance to his spontaneous energy. The siblings carry on their routines. Apollo's lyre sends golden notes echoing through halls. Artemis glides through forests, arrows sharp and precise. Demeter tends gardens glowing with ripening crops. Hestia maintains her hearth, a grounding presence. Poseidon tests ocean currents far below. Hades hums quietly in shadow, reminding all that balance requires constant vigilance. Zeus pauses on the highest terrace, fingertips brushing a gathering cloud. A faint spark of lightning arcs along his palm, a whisper of potential storms waiting to be shaped. The mortal world moves beneath him, fragile and unpredictable. Somewhere prayers rise. Somewhere whispers of titans stir. Somewhere consequences quietly begin their unfolding. And as the sun reaches its zenith, you sense the king of Olympus holding it all together. The vast, intricate web of influence, desire, and responsibility, balanced delicately on the shoulders of one immortal being. The afternoon deepens, and Olympus glows with the golden haze of sunlight filtering through drifting clouds. You follow Zeus as he strolls along the palace terraces, fingers trailing through mist, tracing currents of wind and small arcs of lightning. Each movement is measured, deliberate, yet almost playful, a god aware of his own infinite power, but still curious about the subtleties of influence. The palace is quiet, save for faint echoes. Hermes zipping past with messages, Apollo tuning his lyre, and Demeter tending gardens heavy with ripe fruit. Below, mortals continue their routines, unaware of the attention they attract. Farmers wipe sweat from their brows, children chase each other through fields, and the faint smell of bread baking drifts upward from villages. Zeus watches, noting small inequalities or imbalances, and sometimes he nudges them subtly. A soft wind to guide a flock, a quick flash of sunlight to reveal hidden paths, a faint ripple in a stream to remind mortals that the world is alive and observed. Historians still debate whether these interactions represent early Greek ideas of moral responsibility, divine oversight, or simply narrative flourishes to illustrate omnipotence. Either way, the pattern is clear. The exercise of power requires vigilance, care, and a touch of foresight. Love, as always, complicates matters. You see Zeus's gaze fall on a maiden wandering along a sunlit riverbank. He considers form, bull, swan, or cloud, each choice carrying consequences that stretch far beyond the immediate moment. Europa, Io, and Leda are future echoes of his whimsy, legends born of desire and divine curiosity. Fringe scholars suggest these romantic myths are more than entertaining tales. They may encode psychological lessons or symbolically represent cycles of nature. Hera's influence weaves silently alongside. She watches from the shadows, arms crossed, expression calm yet alert. She notes Zeus's movements, storing every glance and gesture for future strategic use. Her patience is formidable, her subtlety a perfect counterbalance to his impulsive tendencies. In the delicate equilibrium of Olympus, she is as essential as any bolt of lightning. The other siblings maintain their roles. Apollo's lyre sends warm golden notes through the halls. Artemis glides through the forests with arrows sharpened. Demeter nurtures gardens glowing in the afternoon light. Hestia maintains her hearth, and Poseidon tests ocean currents far below. Hades remains in the underworld, a quiet reminder that equilibrium must be upheld on all fronts. Zeus pauses on the highest terrace, fingertips brushing a cloud curling into an almost imperceptible spiral. Lightning hums faintly along his palm, a whisper of storms waiting to be released. The mortal world breathes beneath him, fragile yet endlessly fascinating. Somewhere prayers rise, somewhere whispers of Titan stir, somewhere futures quietly begin to unfold. And in this moment, you sense the eternal rhythm of Olympus, power, desire, vigilance, and consequence, woven seamlessly, held in the hands of one immortal being whose choices shape worlds yet unknown. Twilight drapes Olympus in soft hues of lavender and rose, stretching shadows across marble halls and terraces. You drift beside Zeus as he walks slowly, absorbing the subtle shifts in light, temperature, and energy. Even as evening settles, the air hums faintly with potential storms, a reminder that the balance he maintains is delicate. Every flicker of cloud, every breeze, every ripple of the sea is under his watchful gaze. Below, mortals are winding down their day. Smoke drifts from chimneys, rivers gleam in the fading sun, and the chatter of village life softens into lullabies and distant whistles. Zeus observes quietly, noting the consequences of earlier interventions. A harvested field bending under abundant grain, a fisherman adjusting nets after a gentle gust, a child giggling at a wayward chicken. Each small detail is a reminder that influence, even divine, carries responsibility. Historians still debate whether these observations in myth reflect ancient Greek ideas about oversight and justice, or are symbolic storytelling tools to illustrate omnipotence. Either way, the narrative emphasizes the continuous tension between power and consequence, showing that vigilance is never optional, even for a god. Love complicates the evening further. A mortal maiden wanders along a riverbank, hair catching the twilight glow. Zeus considers approaching as a swan, a cloud, or a subtle shimmer of golden light. Every choice carries the potential for consequences beyond the immediate moment. Europa, Io, Leda, all futures shaped by divine curiosity and desire. Fringe scholars suggest these myths reflect psychological insights into temptation and responsibility, while others see symbolic depictions of natural forces. Hera observes from the shadows, quiet and calculating. Her patience is her weapon, her influence subtle but ever-present. She notes every glance, every gesture, every ripple caused by Zeus's whims, waiting for moments when strategy can outweigh impulse. In Olympus, foresight is as potent as raw power. The siblings move through their own routines. Apollo's lyre fills halls with golden echoes. Artemis glides through shadowed forests. Demeter tends glowing gardens. Hestia maintains her hearth, and Poseidon stirs distant waves. Hades murmurs from his underworld domain, a reminder that equilibrium is a web stretching across planes of existence. Zeus pauses on a terrace, fingertips brushing a cloud that curls like smoke. A faint spark of lightning flickers along his palm, a whisper of storms waiting. Below, mortals stir, prayers rise, and the subtle movements of the world continue, guided gently by his watchful presence. The balance of Olympus holds, for now, delicate yet enduring, shaped by power, desire, vigilance, and quiet consequence. Night deepens on Olympus, a velvet curtain dotted with stars stretching infinitely above the marble palace. You drift beside Zeus as he walks along the highest terrace, fingers brushing the drifting mist that curls around columns and railings. Even in darkness, the air thrums faintly with his power, a reminder that vigilance never truly rests. Every cloud, every distant glimmer of lightning, every whisper of the wind is a note in the ongoing symphony of control he conducts across the world below. Mortals settle into their homes. Fires flicker in cottages, streams glint in moonlight, and the faint laughter of children fades into sleepy murmurs. Zeus watches, knowing that each choice he's made, direct or subtle, has threaded through their lives. A cloud nudged here, a soft wind there, a hint of lightning in the distance. All acts of influence that ripple through time in ways both gentle and profound. Historians still debate whether these nightly attentions in myth were intended to show moral oversight or simply dramatize omnipotence. Either way, Zeus embodies vigilance, the constant negotiation between raw power and the consequences that inevitably follow. Love, ever present, complicates the quiet of the night. You see his gaze fall on a maiden walking along a moonlit glade. He weighs forms, swan, cloud, mist, and considers consequences carefully, knowing that even minor whims echo through generations. Europa, Io, and Leda are future legends, lives altered by desire and divine curiosity. Fringe scholars suggest these stories reveal early human insight into morality and impulse, while others claim they dramatize natural cycles in mythic form. Hera watches from the shadows, calm but alert, noting every glance, every shift, every ripple of influence. Patience and strategy are her tools, subtle yet formidable. In the delicate balance of Olympus, her presence ensures that impulse is tempered and foresight honored. The siblings continue their work even in the quiet night. Apollo's lyre hums golden notes that echo softly through halls. Artemis moves through forests with quiet precision. Demeter tends nocturnal growth in glowing gardens. Hestia maintains her hearth with gentle warmth, and Poseidon stirs ocean currents far below. Hades murmurs in shadows, a reminder that balance stretches across all realms. Zeus pauses at the highest balcony, fingertips brushing a cloud curling faintly like smoke. Lightning arcs softly along his hand, a subtle hum of potential storms. Below, mortals dream, titans stir in their distant prisons, and the consequences of desire, power, and vigilance quietly unfold. The delicate web of Olympus holds, for now, shaped by centuries of observation, patience, and the restless energy of one immortal king. The first hints of pre-dawn light stretch across Olympus, painting marble terraces in soft pinks and silvers. You drift alongside Zeus as he moves through the quiet palace, footsteps echoing faintly, mingling with the gentle hum of clouds brushing against columns. The air is crisp, fragrant with pine, wet stone, and the lingering warmth of fire from Hestia's hearth. Even in these still hours, the pulse of vigilance thrums in every corner of the palace, a reminder that ruling the heavens is never complete. Below, mortals stir reluctantly, stretching after nights of sleep. A farmer checks the alignment of his fields, a child chases a stray goat, and the faint glimmer of river water catches the first rays of light. Zeus observes, noting patterns, small injustices, and opportunities to guide. Each action, subtle or grand, carries consequences that ripple outward, reminding you and him that power is both a gift and a responsibility. Historians still debate whether these moments in myth symbolize moral oversight or simply dramatize divine omnipotence. Either way, Zeus exemplifies the delicate balance between influence and restraint, power and ethical consideration. Love, as always, complicates even these quiet hours. His gaze drifts to a maiden in a distant valley, sunlight catching the strands of her hair. He weighs the forms he might assume: bull, eagle, cloud, and the potential consequences of each choice. Europa, Io, Leda, future legends shaped by his whims, loom in his mind as reminders that desire has lasting influence. Fringe scholars suggest these tales encode early insights into human psychology, while others see them as symbolic depictions of natural phenomena. Hera watches, as ever, from her shadowed balcony, quiet and calculating. Her patience is a counterweight to Zeus's impulsive tendencies. Every glance, every subtle action, every ripple of consequence is stored, catalogued, and considered. She is an essential presence in maintaining the equilibrium of Olympus. The siblings move through their own routines. Apollo's lyre hums golden notes through the halls. Artemis glides silently through forests. Demeter tends luminous gardens. Hestia maintains her hearth. Poseidon nudges the oceans far below, and Hades murmurs quietly in shadow, reminding all that balance requires attention across all realms. Zeus steps to the highest balcony, fingertips brushing clouds that curl faintly in anticipation of storms. Lightning arcs softly, a whisper of potential energy, while below, the mortal world sleeps. Dreams rise, and whispers of Titans stir. The interplay of power, vigilance, and consequence is eternal, delicate, and intricate. You sense it in the hush of the palace, in the glow of marble, in the faint hum of Olympus itself. And as dawn blooms fully, the cycle begins anew. Desire, responsibility, love, and power interweaving seamlessly in the eternal dance of Olympus. For now, balance holds, poised delicately in the hands of one immortal king, as the first rays of light herald both promise and the subtle weight of duty.